Melanie Hall was described by her parents as a young, vibrant girl. She grew up very close to her sister. Her mother would dress them in the same outfits. And Melanie worked so hard at school. She was very academic and wanted to go to university and study psychology. As she got older, Melanie did graduate from the University of Bath in 1995 with a degree in sociology and psychology. Melanie Hall's mother, Pat, said graduation had been a cherished dream of Melanie's for 4 years. Her parents were so proud of her. Melanie also worked as a clerical officer at Bath's Royal United Hospital. It was on the 8th of June 1996, and that night, Melanie had arranged to go out with her boyfriend Philip, and then stay over at his house afterwards. So after she got all glammed up for the night, her mother drove and dropped her off at his house. So the couple arrived then at Cadillac's nightclub in Bath with another couple. But at some point after a few drinks during that night, it was reported that Melanie and her boyfriend started to have an argument. It was stated that Philip had left the pub quite upset. He had apparently seen Melanie dancing with another man, and this really upset him, so he left. Now, the friends that they went with, they didn't know at this point that there'd been an argument and that her boyfriend had left. So when they saw her sat on a bar stool around 1:10 a.m, they said their goodbyes and off they went. If they'd have realised that she'd been on her own, then they probably wouldn't have left her. And that night, Melanie's parents were not expecting her home. Remember, she was supposedly staying over at Philip's. So when they received a phone call the next day from Melanie's work to say she'd not turned up, they soon became concerned. Melanie's mum also worked at the hospital. She phoned Melanie's dad to see where she was, but it soon became clear that something was terribly wrong, and the police were contacted. Philip was spoken to by police as he had apparently been the last person to have been with Melanie. He described his devastation at her disappearance and told them what had happened that night before. Avon and Somerset police launched several searches of the River Avon after her disappearance and interviewed thousands of clubbers and taxi drivers that were around that night. Police trawled through 96 hours of CCTV footage, but there was nothing on film showing Melanie leaving the nightclub or walking through the streets of Bath that were covered by the cameras they found. At that time, a £10,000 reward was offered for information leading to where Melanie could be, and the BBC television show Crime Watch and Crime Stoppers both made public appeals for information. Melanie's sister also spoke out asking people to come forward with information, but despite all of the efforts by police and family, there was still no closer to tracing where Melanie Hall ended up. The Crime Watch appeal that broadcast on the 5th of November 1996 included details of unconfirmed sightings of Melanie around the time that she disappeared. One witness saw a woman who resembled Melanie in Cadillac's nightclub. She recalled the woman talking to a man and remembered seeing them leave together. At approximately 2 a.m. on the 9th of June, 2 women had left Domino's Pizza in Walcott Street and were heading towards the nightclub when they say they witnessed a woman who looked like Melanie Hall arguing with a man outside the church hall. This was the EFIT photo that was released. He was described as white, in his late 20s, 5 foot 10 inches tall, of medium build, with dark hair, dark brown eyes, bushy eyebrows and clean shaven. He was wearing black trousers, black shoes and a brown silk shirt. It's possible he had a gold hoop earring in his right ear and wore a flashy gold watch. Now, around the same time, further along Walcott Street, another witness saw a man trying to coax a woman into a car park. Now, this was about 100 metres away from Cadillac's nightclub and the church building. And there was this unconfirmed sighting of her arguing with a man. Years later, Melanie Hall was declared dead on the 17th of November 2004. Her father recalled thinking at the time that they would probably never find out in their lifetime what had happened to Melanie or find her body.
I think probably over the first couple of years we did raise our hopes every time the police came to tell us that there might be some progress in the investigation.
As the years went by, whatever had happened to Melanie, that possibly she would not be found in our lifetime.
But then, on the 5th of October 2009, a motorway worker who was cutting grass and collecting rubbish found a plastic bin bag containing what he felt were large bones. He was working on the slip road at junction 14 on the M5 motorway. The bones in the bag included a skull, a pelvis, and a thigh bone. Further remains were found buried and spread around a field at the side of the motorway. The bones were taken for analysis by forensic professionals, while DNA had already been taken from the family so that any evidence found could be analysed alongside their DNA profiles for any matches. Police then confirmed that the remains found were that of a human. A piece of jewellery found at the site was shown to Melanie Hall's parents, who confirmed that it did belong to their daughter. And despite this, police refused to confirm that the body was that of Melanie Hall until a full post-mortem examination had been carried out. Family knew at this point it had to be their daughter. The remains were formally identified as belonging to Melanie Hall through dental records and DNA on the 7th of October. She had incurred severe blunt force trauma to the head, resulting in a fractured skull, cheekbone and jaw. And at the scene, thin blue rope had been used to tie the bin bags around her body. Miss Hall's clothing, a pale blue silk dress, black suede mule shoes, a cream single-breasted long-sleeve jacket, and a black satchel-type handbag had never been found. Some of her other belongings, including a checkbook, bank card, a Next watch, and silver-hooped earrings, also were still never found. Melanie Hall's parents launched a fresh appeal for anyone with information to come forward. Her father said that while Melanie was murdered, it wasn't just one person's life that was taken that day. It changed and ruined many lives after. Mine and my wife's, my daughter's and my mother's. And there's obviously someone out there that knows what happened. If they felt they could come forward with information which would lead us to finding out what happened to Melanie, then at least we could feel that we've done all we can for our child. After spending 13 years on this case, DS Mark Britton had decided to stay on after his retirement to continue working on Melanie Hall's disappearance. The operation, named Operation Denmark, it was one of those cases he needed to solve before he retired. On the 29th of October 2009, police announced that 3 keys for a Ford vehicle, possibly a Transit, a Fiesta or an Escort, had been found near the body, and that they were working with Ford to try and identify the vehicle. Crime Watch also launched a fresh appeal for information, which resulted in more than 200 phone calls from the public. I'm of the belief that Melanie did know her killer, the detective said. In October 2019, police revealed that they'd obtained a partial DNA profile from the rope wrapped around the bag containing Melanie Hall's remains, and they stated that they remained confident that Melanie Hall's killer would be caught. Her parents reinstated a $50,000 reward for information, leading to an arrest and conviction. In 1998, the suspected killer of Susie Lampew, John Cannon, had been questioned over the murder. Known for his Bristol connections, John was spoken to by police after allegations came to light that he had plotted the murder of Melanie Hall from his prison cell at HMP Durham. Detectives investigated these claims that John had spent many hours apparently planning what he described as the perfect abduction with a fellow inmate. Now, the other inmate was a convicted rapist who supposedly put the plan into action after being released from prison. Although John was in prison at the time of Melanie Hall's abduction and murder, some witnesses came forward to say they were certain that John Cannon was the man they'd seen abducting Melanie Hall that night. Melanie Hall's parents said that they feared if John Cannon was the man responsible for their daughter's death, they would never know the truth of what happened to her, as John was infamous for tactically withholding information about his victims in order to maintain a sense of control over investigators. In 2003, police arrested 2 men in connection with Melanie Hall's disappearance, but they were later released without charge after police searched buildings and a field near Bath. In 2009, a 37-year-old man confessed to his involvement in Melanie's murder to police in Greater Manchester, but he was later eliminated from their inquiry after undergoing psychiatric tests. In July 2010, a 38-year-old man from Bath was arrested on suspicion of Melanie Hall's murder and also subsequently released on bail. But in August 2010, a 39-year-old man from Wiltshire was arrested by police on suspicion of murder after handing himself in at a police station in Avon and Somerset. The man was subsequently released on bail. In 2013, police said that they had found a white Volkswagen Golf connected to their inquiries and had received relevant information about the rope used to tie Melanie Hall's body. On the 25th of November 2013, it was reported that a 44-year-old man had been arrested at an address in Bath on suspicion of murder. He was also later released on bail, and property at Roundhill Park was searched. On the 28th of November 2014, it was reported that there was insufficient evidence to charge any of these suspects. On the 23rd of June 2016, a 45-year-old man was then arrested following retrieval of DNA from Melanie Hall's remains and released on bail a few days later. By October 2019, 11 arrests had been made during the police investigation into who had murdered and abducted Melanie Hall, but no one has ever been charged. It has been suggested that there may be a link between Melanie Hall's murder and Levi Belfield. If you cover or you research quite a lot of UK true crime, Levi Belfield, life imprisonment currently for a whole life order. He murdered Millie Dowler, Marsha McDonnell and Emily Delagrand and committed these between 2002 and 2004. But a suggested link with convicted Christopher Halliwell, who is serving a life sentence for a whole life order for the murders of Sean O'Callaghan and Becky Goddens, has also been ruled out by Avon and Somerset Police. Superintendent James Riccio from Avon and Somerset Police said just one small piece of information could solve this case and help us uncover the truth about what actually happened to Melanie that night. My team and I continue to be humbled by the courage, bravery and support that Melanie's family have shown us over the years, and we desperately want to find answers for them. We'd also like information about an unconfirmed sighting of a woman, potentially matching Melanie's description, who was engaged in an argument with a man in Old Orchard, around the corner from the nightclub. We don't know whether this was Melanie, so if anyone has any information that could help on this aspect, please call us. If you were involved in the aftermath of this crime in any way, maybe you assisted with the removal of Melanie's body, but were not involved with the murder, we want to hear from you. Were you in Cadillac's nightclub that night? It was the evening when England drew 1-1 with Switzerland in the opening game of the Football Euro 96 Championships. If you were there and haven't spoken to police yet, contact us. Did you see anything suspicious, any activity or a vehicle parked on the northbound J14 slip road of the M5 at Thornbury in the early morning hours of Sunday the 9th of June 1996, or the days immediately afterwards? Are you concerned about the change in behaviour of a friend or relative or anyone showing particular interest in this inquiry? Do you have any information on where Melanie's clothing or belongings may be? Now, contact information for this crime would be 101, asking to speak to somebody in Avon and Somerset Constabulary, and make sure you mention that the operation that you are wanting to speak about is Operation Denmark, referring to Melanie Hall. So I have been digging with a lot of information because, as you know, I cover a lot of these cases. And as soon as I saw this e-fit, I recognised the man. Well, I felt I recognised the man. To me, the man on the left on the e-fit looks very similar to Stephen Wright. Now, he's prolific. He's currently locked away for a full life sentence. If you look at the e-fit photo, Steve Wright always has his hair to that left-hand side. His eyes look the same, hooded eyes look the same, the very thin mouth and the shape of the nose and face just looks very similar to me. But that's not all. Stephen owned a Ford Mondeo, and let's remember, Ford keys were found at the scene near Melanie Hall's body. In the 1990s, Stephen Wright was living in South London, not far from Bath. He had a history of murdering young women after nights out. Let me know what you think about this. I have spoken to Crime Stoppers and passed this information across to them regarding this case so that they can hopefully look at links between Stephen Wright and the person that apparently killed Melanie Hall. Let's hope that more information comes forward, but unfortunately, as the years go by, people's memories of this night become more insignificant. And if people haven't already come forward, it's possible that they never will. But if you know anything about this case, please contact 101, speak to Crime Stoppers and mention Operation Denmark. What do you think about the similarities between Stephen Wright and this e-fit photo on the